we did miss you. Welcome, a special segment of Racing Today. Australia's top trainers in here, along with Keith Hillier and Max Presnell. I'm not sure who to introduce. Which is the top trainer in Australia? Now, Max said to me last week, David and David Hayes and Lee Freedman, what price Lee Freedman beating David Hayes for the premiership? Well, I said David Hayes was still the 6-4 on favourite and Lee Freedman 10-9 against. Lee, am I a good judge or a bad judge? Can you knock Hayesy off for the first time and win the Victorian premiership?
I think if you took 10-9 now, you're under the odds, really.
Under the odds? You think you should be longer than that?
Absolutely, yeah.
You'd like 6-4 on your chances, David, to make it 5 in a row?
I'll tell you in about 6 months, Bruce.
Well, I reckon, Bruce, and that John Hawkes should be in the market as well.
Most definitely.
As a roughie. He's going to build his team in Melbourne from 35 now to 50 within a week.
Yes, he's got great numbers and his team's working. It'll be very hard to beat.
Max, the Darwin trip's done Keith the water good, hasn't he? He looks a treat.
Yeah, well, if it was cosmetic surgery he was up there for, I think you ought to get a refund. Now, what about that pair of trainers down there being coy and shopping for a price? John Hawkes is one of the great trainers in Australia today, but he's a 25-1 chance of winning the Melbourne Premiership. And I'd just like to know what Lee Freedman's got up his sleeve. And, of course, David Hayes is just trying to get better than the 6-4 on. So let's just be a little bit more open, relax,
Gee, Max, it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back, and you're obviously still mainlining on a syringe of sarcasm.
With your permission, Max, can we go to the Manikato yesterday and have a chat?
Feel free.
Good, here we go. David, you didn't win the race, but you were the one that was smiling afterwards, weren't you? Spanish Mix winning, which was a real surprise. She had beaten Lee's great horse, Scalacci, in the William Reid a year and a half ago. But your three horses I think we probably should concentrate on. Primacy, Palace Rain and Star of Maple.
Primacy ran very well, was just beaten by a horse that handled the track a bit better than him yesterday, and she beat him fair and square. But I was thrilled with my two spring staying hopefuls. Palace Rain, after a 10-month layoff, really ran on very well. And Star of Maple's not even in the picture now. And Shane Dye said it was the run of the race. So he's a fair judge on his day.
Well, he is a fair judge on his day. Sequalo Hariba went mad early, didn't they? And probably just over-raced.
That's Sequalo in front, Bruce. He really collapses to finish 5th. And Hariba finished 2nd last. At this stage, it looked like David would win the race with Primacy. That Spanish Mix going up on the outside of Primacy. You wouldn't believe, David, at this stage that the margin would extend in the favour of the Sydney mare.
Yes, this is where I lost my voice, actually. I thought when coming into the straight.
You must have backed him.
He did. He was over the odds at 8-1.
Like the 6th, and she did do a great job, and she's now won 2 Group 1 races, both of them at Moonee Valley, and maybe that's her very best track. But, you know, I'd like to ask Max, from a perspective of form, because we thought the Melbourne 3-year-olds were fantastic and would be clearly superior 3-year-olds going into 4-year-olds. This has turned it upside down a little.
Yes, I do agree, but on the perspective for form, Spanish Mix was beaten by a biased track at Rose Hill last start. Spanish Mix was stuck in the slower section on the rail. No horses won from that section that day, and you can see how far Spanish Mix improved. However, the jockeys these days, Lee and David, have they got any judgment of pace? That race was run far too fast early, and obviously was made for the back markers. Do you feel that this current bunch of jockeys has that same feel for how quick they're going than, say, jockeys of 20 years ago? Perhaps I'm asking a little bit too much. You can't go back that far, but Keith Hillier can.
Well, I thought probably Hariba was rushed up a bit yesterday. It'd be fair to say that he didn't jump all that well, but he was dashed up and.
I think it's fair to say they probably had problems with the horse, and he showed that in the yard yesterday, and that he was probably a little big for the race. And I guess whatever he does, he'll improve a bit on. Just
a worry with him now, though, after such a poor run. And a question mark, I think, with Sequalo. St Covert yesterday returned to racing in the Mitchell Mackenzie. He won for you. It was a workmanlike performance. I think he was aided by the inside in the end, being able to hold Plushka out.
Yes, he was. I think the point of the race was he beat the first up horses quite convincingly, but Plushka, with the benefit of a bit of winter racing, ran extremely well, and I think might be a bit underrated. You know, he was asked to stretch yesterday to beat him, but he did run a race record, and I think he'll get better the further he goes.
Pretty much a sign, David, of a good horse, a horse that keeps giving, like St Covert obviously does.
Yes, he does. He's just a professional, and And horses, I find very good horses that win by small margins, whether it be superimpose or better loosen up, they tend to keep winning.
Exactly. How many races did better loosen up win by narrow margins?
Is this your gun horse? If Lee's gun horse is Mahogany, a year older, is this the superstar of your stable?
He's probably the one with the potential to be the superstar. I haven't actually got a superstar at the moment, but I've got a lot of potential superstars.
Straight into the Ascot Vale?
That's correct, yeah.
Lee, did you like what you saw with St Cuthbert? Remembering you've got Dan Zero and a couple of others that might knock him off. You beat him in the Golden Slipper. Seeing it yesterday, I wouldn't be terribly frightened. I mean, it was a good win. Let's not knock him, but...
It's a bit unfair commenting on other people's horses, but I thought there's probably two...
It won't stop you.
It won't stop you, no. There's 2 points to the argument. I think one, I've seen a bit of him, and he's not really a sit and sprint horse. He tends to he whacks away quick, but he whacks away at the same bat. He's not a horse that can sit like they did yesterday and sprint. If there was a criticism, he was at level weights, and he had to be punched out to beat not taking anything away from Plushka, but he is...
Get to the point.
He's a third,
you reckon he was...
He's a third-level sprinter.
Yeah, so it didn't really frighten you. I just wondered, David, that horse did a lot of travelling as a 2-year-old, St Cuthbert, something that normally top 2-year-olds don't. You took him everywhere, didn't you?
Yes, he had sort of what you call an English preparation. He never went out of work. And I've always got that trick up my sleeve. If he loses a bit of form, I'll take him for a drive in the float.
Is St Cuthbert being set for the Caulfield Guineas, and will you clash again with Dan Zero?
That's the likelihood, yeah. We'll kick off probably in the McNeil Quality in a couple of weeks, and we'll just head towards the Guineas and maybe the Derby. I mean, he's by a Northern Dancer line horse, and there's a bit of stoutness in his female line, so he may be a Derby horse, yeah.
Max, who did you think was the 2-year-old of last season, St Cuthbert or Dan Zero?
St Cuthbert. St Cuthbert had the performances. I thought St Cuthbert was workmanlike yesterday, but I want you to take into consideration he did come home his last 800 metres in 45-something, the Manicato 47-something, so there was merit there. Certainly the weight aspect, as Lee pointed out, I think is relevant, and it's how St Cuthbert goes on now, and David Hayes is the best judge of that.
Stormy Regent yesterday, Max, as we look at the Premier, was he lucky to hold this race? What actually did develop afterwards? Did the stewards look at it head-on and decide...
Yes, I would say very, very lucky to hold the race. But I'd like to point this out first, how slow they're going. In complete contrast to the Manicato, nobody wanted to lead in the Premier. They're jogging in front. Stormy Regent was sent out not to lead. He was forced to lead. So it doesn't give the back markers much chance. Now, clearly chosen back in about 4th place on the fence, now starts to pull hard, gets his head up. Flitter got a check behind, but they're really just jogging in front. And I don't think it was good enough. But still, Stormy Regent was lucky to win. He's making his own way in front. Smoky Trelaw, to his credit, is keeping him in touch.
On Keltreese in 2nd place and Big Dreams third,
the red cap. And they come into the straight. Well, the back markers had very little chance of running them down, considering the slow early sections. Now, at this point, you can see that getting off the rail a little, Stormy Regent, Big Dreams on the fence now, angling back. Perhaps that angle cost him race. Now, watch this here, where Keltreese goes up to be on terms. Now, note how Stormy Regent got away then. Now, Keltreese comes at him again. Now, what happened there? I think you'll find that Stormy Regent came out and ran Keltreese off the track, but Trelaw didn't lodge a protest.
Here we go, Max. This is the head-on.
You'll note now, moving off the fence, Stormy Regent, see, getting right over on top of the other one. Now, that bump obviously cost him ground, and certainly, had the protest been lodged, and was upheld, Big Dreams would have got the race because Keltreese ran 3rd. Shrek had a look at the tape, said it was not, quote, appropriate to take action. I'd like to have laid 10s on if Keltreese had run 2nd, would have taken action, and about 10 to 9 on the protest would have been upheld. But gentlemen, the 2 leading trainers from Melbourne are in the studio. What did you think of the interference? Was it substantial enough to change the race?
Well, Max, I would have thought if the stewards thought there was room for a protest, they would have lodged it themselves.
But if you were training Keltreese yesterday and you saw the head-on, do you reckon you would have protested?
Oh, I would have protested.
David?
Yes, very much like the Ali Sham Scalacci protest that I was lucky enough to get it off Scalacci, but a very similar situation.
Well, you've been involved also, haven't you, with Durbridge recently in controversial protests? Here we go again, where he does run out. She's a pretty good
He
point.
didn't stop riding, though.
Yeah, but
No,
he did lose
neither-
momentum.
David, either did Larry Cassidy stop riding. Now, the rule states if your horse is running erratically, you've got to stop riding. It's not up to Wayne Treloar to stop riding. In fact, Wayne Treloar obviously didn't even know the interference was there, but it was there. And on Lee Friedman's point, Lee, it's pretty hard for stewards to change the placings of a race when the jockey doesn't even protest.
Yeah, look, it's a good point, Max. Look, we haven't got all day, unfortunately, but with so much to ask you about. What's the one race you want to win this year? I mean, at the end of the Melbourne Cup Carnival, if you could win one race in the next 3 months, which would it be for you, David?
The Cox Plate.
So what's your horse for the Cox Plate, David?
I hope it's St Covert. I hope he's a bit like a Stylish Century. I know he didn't win, but he went very close.
Lee?
Yeah, I think it's probably the Cox Plate. I haven't got a frontline handicap stayer this year unless Mahogany ends up running in the Melbourne Cup or the Phantom Chance. So, yeah, the Cox Plate.
And how do you actually get on? Because I read recently where, David, you had a real shot at Lee saying he's a great businessman, that he gets all these used horses, used cars, and you were sick of all the rubbish that, you know, people saying that he's the best trainer when you, in fact, have got the record. Do you actually get on all right?
Oh, look, he's fine when he's not winning. I think he's a great bloke.
Look, they've been holding hands in the makeup. It's not a problem. It's a new rumour.
I know who started it. Thanks for giving us your time, and hopefully we can catch up with both of you throughout the spring, because I know you're going to have a lot of success.
Pleasure.
Hope so.
Gee, Max, you didn't know that, did you? Holding hands in the makeup room.
As long as Keith Hillier's not holding anyone.
Max, see you next week. Keith, see you next week. We're going to take a break.